Football Network, your home for Lions, Wolverines, and Spartans news. Today we will be covering the Lions kind of free agency, all the way up to this point, every move that they've done, essentially. We're going to be giving them grades. So that's going to be kind of fun to go over, and actually grade these out because, we haven't done that really to this point. We just kind of talked about it, gave our opinions and everything. But it should be a fun one. We're also going to talk about some draft prospects for the Lions and just in general, too. And of course, the Brad Holmes interview, the big talk of the town right now, which is the first thing we're going to start with, or the first thing we're going to talk about. That was the same thing twice. With that being said, Brad Holmes went on an interview with, the Detroit pod guys, Pride of Detroit. I should at least say their full name in due respect because I really like them. All of them pretty much. I would say all of them. I don't know all of them necessarily, so I'm gonna kind of put an asterisk next to that. But all the ones that I've seen seem like cool guys and kind of know what they're talking about. So
Yeah,
shout
some
out
of
to
them are
those
great.
dudes. Yeah, for sure. And with that being said, I mean, there's kind of a lot to unpack here, but not really at the same time, if that makes any sense to anybody. He said a lot, but I don't know if it's new, if that makes sense. Like, I think this is kind of what we all were thinking. So, just to kind of go over it, essentially, he said the Lions liked Borum as a starter if needed, but, they do view him as a startable player. So I don't know if that necessarily means they're gonna start him, and I don't know if that means they hope to start him. I think this points to what we all thought it was gonna be when he got signed. He's a guy that can be a veteran stopgap if the guy we draft at 17 or wherever in this draft isn't ready or, there isn't a guy available. Because, look, call me crazy. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion we take a tackle at 17. I don't know if it's a foregone conclusion we take one in the first round because, the whole Sewell moving to left tackle, I think Borum could play right tackle for us just fine. Okay. I know a lot of people are hating on him because his PFF grades and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, that's cool and all. But, and I'm saying this as a guy who hasn't necessarily watched all of his film. Just watch the film yourself before you just, oh, I think he can do this or I think he can do that. Like, Brad Holmes, I guarantee, has watched the film, and that's why he signed the guy because he thinks he's a good enough player. And whether that's true or not, we shall see. But I just feel a lot of people get too ahead of themselves necessarily with their own opinions.
I don't know, Jace.
Sometimes
A popular radio show told me I should hate it, so
true. Very true. And that works a lot of the time for some reason. I don't know what that is, but it seems to work a lot. Anyway,
too
with
much.
that being said, right. With that being said, this is just one of the investments they made, along the offensive line, which, is a big reason why they weren't able to sign a lot of defensive guys, per Brad Holmes, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, they signed Cade Mays, to his $8 million per year deal, and then Borum got essentially $5 million this year. I mean, we'll see how it ends up playing out, but I think all Lions fans came into this off season like offensive line is our number one need. And it's funny because now that we got offensive line, everybody's like, we all knew it was defense the whole time, actually. And it's like, okay, but 2 weeks ago, or maybe not 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, you were sitting there because this was prior to signing anybody. You were sitting there going, we need offensive line, we need a center. If we don't get a center, I'll be pissed. And that's really all we need is, well, not all, but you know what I mean. That's our top priority right now. And those same people who were saying that a few weeks ago are now saying, where's the defense, Brad? We need defense. This defense sucked. Blah blah blah. It's like we only have so much money, people, and we should know that. We should
What do
have
you
known.
mean we only have so much money? We can't go get Trey Hendrickson and Tyler Linderbaum and trade for Max Crosby?
No,
Oh,
unfortunately.
okay.
As awesome as that would be, that's not real. So that's where we're at, But with that being said, I agree with Brad Holmes' strategy in a lot of ways, which we'll get to a little bit later, and I disagree with him in some ways, but that doesn't mean I'm right or that he's right or that we're both wrong. Who knows? It could be all of those. We all could be a little bit right. I mean, we'll see how the draft, plays out. But with that being said, it makes a lot of sense that they didn't have a lot of money already going into the free agent period. They're not able to sign a lot of guys. I mean, look at the 1 year deals that they signed and everything like that. It just makes a lot of sense in my opinion. Um, and like I said, O line was the priority, and I think everybody knew that coming into the offseason. Like, we got to protect Jared Goff to be able to have an elite offense. And I think everybody knows that obviously defense wins you championships, but offense carries you throughout the rest of the season. I think, I think you got to have both, and it's good to have an elite offense. Or I'm sorry, it's good to have an elite defense, but if you have an elite offense, that can take some pressure off your defense. There's not just one way to win a football game, folks, and I think so many people get caught in that. So it's like you got to realize we're doing it on offense. You know how many top five offenses have won Super Bowls? A lot of them. Okay, um, that's
So you
just
think Drew Brees and the Saints had a good defense?
right. Exactly. And that's my, and I mean, to be fair, or wait, no, I'm an idiot. I was going to say they played the Bears, but they did not. I think, didn't they both
Not
play the
two
Colts?
NFC teams, no.
Yeah, didn't they both play the Colts? I think that's maybe why I'm
I
getting
know the
confused.
Bears did. I can't remember who the Saints played off the top of my
Okay.
head. I just know
Because
they
I
were led
believe,
with 95% of their money going on offense.
yeah, and I mean, we've seen that happen a few other times too, like the Greatest Show on Turf Rams and,
Know them very
different.
well.
Yep. Yeah. And different teams like that. So I think it makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. And
And
then,
as you
he
sorry,
go ahead, sorry. No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, and as you mentioned, like we've seen the complete reverse of that, like the 2000 Ravens or '02, I
Yeah.
think it might have been '02 Ravens, where they just had a completely stacked defense and literally no offense, like next to none. And then
Trent
just this
Dilfer,
past,
baby.
yeah, exactly. Like I mean, next to none, borderline a college offense. But when you have Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Suggs, like it, you got it done. And then just this past year, I'm not going to say the Seattle's completely defensive minded. Don't get me wrong; they have an absolute elite defense. But I mean, who won the Super Bowl MVP? Their running back, who kind of iced the game away, ate up the clock, and then they let him go in free agency. But that's a different point. um, but they are, of course, a defensive minded team, although it doesn't hurt having. I know he wasn't great in the Super Bowl itself, but JSN did win Offensive Player of the Year. So, I mean, they were more balanced than I think some people thought of them as.
And that is exactly the point I think we're both making here is that balance is the key. And I feel like too many people get caught up in defense and they go, well, you have to have an elite defense. You really don't. I mean, what is elite? Top five? Maybe even top three, depending on what we're talking about, like quarterbacks or whatever the case. If we're talking the elite of the elite, like top five defenses, they don't grow on trees, folks. So like we have a really good offense in place. Let's go ahead and build around that. And obviously you need a good defense. But I'm not saying like obviously the 32nd overall defense isn't winning you a Super Bowl, but as long as it's like top 18, I think you have a very very good chance as long as your offense is in that upper echelon. Which we'll see if that's going to be the case next year, but it has been the last few years in Detroit. So we'll see what the new offensive line looks like and things like that with Monty out of the picture. And, there's going to be a lot of changes right now. So, with that being said, speaking of changes, Brad Holmes basically said that they didn't choose one player over another. They basically just said, okay, we allotted this much money for offensive line already. We aren't able to make the changes on defense that we really wanted to make coming into the free agent period. So, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of different ways, that you could make different moves, which the Lions chose, kind of, um, I don't want to say throwing things at the wall and hoping they stick because they got a lot of good players, but it's a bunch of 1 year deals on guys that are like pretty good, not great, nothing like super special. But I love what we did in free agency on the defensive side. I wish we did a little bit more, don't get me wrong, but I do like what we did so far. So, and then, mentioning Al Qadim Muhammad versus DJ Wanham is a big conversation point that a lot of people are having right now on the defensive side of the ball. And, you know, Muhammad actually has a much higher cap hit than Wanham this year, even though their reported contracts were the opposite. Wanham's was more reported than Muhammad's, but Wanham's only getting 6 million with incentives. His cap hit's just under 3 million, whereas Muhammad's cap hit is $5.325 million. So it's like about almost $2.5 million difference, and I think that definitely makes you make that change, especially considering Wanham's a lot younger.
That and I'm glad you mentioned the age, because there has definitely been a youth movement as well as, and I know people are going to hate this, but it's a part of the game. It's a part of building a team. So what? You got to deal with it. Um, Kind of pinching the pennies, and as you mentioned, saving even if that's just 2 million, because I know so many people are going to be like, oh, what's 2 million when, the team's 250 million, blah blah blah. It's a lot in the end because that move alone saves us 2 million on the cap at defensive end. I don't want to get too far on a tangent because it's a decent point in some of the talking points we're about to hit on. But for example, like Pachenko instead of Montgomery, at least money wise, is 1.8 instead of 6. So there's another 4 million. So just for those two guys, you're already up to 6, and that's what you're giving Wynham. So I mean, just in your savings, you got a, I don't want to say a free defensive end, but you made the space there for at this point in time, in my opinion, your starting defensive end on the other side of Hutch.
Yeah,
And we made 5, 6, 7 deals that kind of pinch the pennies and save us cap space long term. Also, they are only 1 year deal, so if some of these guys don't work out, they're just off the books completely. Nothing lingering. Um, so yeah, all of these little penny pinching moves, because I've seen people on X go crazy calling him bargain bin Brad, but and to an extent he is
I'm
like,
okay with it,
but
honestly.
it's also solid. Like it's not just signing cheap guys because they're cheap. They also fill a drastic number of needs, as I'll allow us to get into further in detail as we go on.
Yeah, for sure. And the bargain bin thing, I feel like that's where Brad Holmes does his best work. Okay, call me crazy, but I don't know if you guys remember Alex Anzalone, a guy that got signed here and wasn't really like that big of a deal. Like people were like, okay, cool, we got some linebacker depth. It doesn't really move the needle for me. And then he moved the needle for you for the next 5 years that he was in Detroit. I just feel like there's been a lot of those guys. Amik Robertson, we signed him to a 2 year, like $6 million deal or something crazy like that. When he first came in, there's been a lot of guys, that we did that with, and I feel like bargain bin hunting is what we have to do, but also luckily our GM kind of thrives in that scenario. So, with that being said, though, moving on to the next point. Brad Holmes' biggest, kind of point with money wasn't that, we don't have money, period. It's that we have it allotted already to guys in big extensions, Gibbs, Laporta, Branch, and Campbell. There's even more guys that we're going to have to, re-sign in the next few seasons. And if you think about it, I mean, a lot of Lions fans have brought it up on Twitter, and this is something I'll give you props for, which we don't normally do on this show, unfortunately, because there's never really a lot of props to give to a lot of fans, unfortunately. But with that being said, I will say that you know there's been a lot of tweets that I've seen about this particular you know, uh, Dominican Sue, Cliff Averill, Nick Fairley, those guys that we did end up letting walk in free agency or trading them. It doesn't really work out for the Lions in the end. Like a lot of Lions fans, myself included, Sue was one of my favorite Lions players ever because that's kind of the team I grew up with. When he left, I was pissed, man. It hurt me. And obviously, it was like, oh, we can't pay him that much money, blah 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 blah. But he, comes out after he retires and basically says, "Look, the Lions, like, I would have went back there. They didn't give me an offer." Like, and it's like, okay, well, that sucks. And we've seen a lot of Lions fans, kind of bring that up throughout the last few days. Like, look, we've been pissed off before when these guys left, and now a lot of people are pissed because we're trying to keep everybody. Like, we got good players already, folks. We just need some guys to come in, play stopgap for us. Like, I'm so sick and tired of that whole like, Madden type of build where it's like, no, we need two elite edge rushers, three elite wide receivers, an elite running back, elite corners, and it's like that's not how this thing works. There's money involved, and they can't have everybody, unfortunately.
I built that team in Madden so we can do it in real life. I mean, I had to turn the salary cap off, but I was able to put it together.
Like it kills me sometimes because there's not a lot of reality sometimes in a lot of these conversations I see on Twitter. But with that being said, going on with that point, Brad Holmes said he prefers to build from the draft, and he thinks that that keeps that window open because you're building consistency, and I agree with that. Like imagine if we, let Jack Campbell walk or, Sam Laporta walk and we tried to like oh, let's go sign some old guy for way cheaper and try to outsmart ourselves. That would end up being a terrible move in so many different ways for now and the long term because you just made a hole for yourself for the next few years. And a lot of people have talked about trading Jameer Gibbs, like he's an elite running back. The position doesn't have that much value, which I personally disagree with. But there's been a lot of talk about it, and that's a big reason why I wouldn't trade him because who knows if the next running back you get is even going to be half the guy that Gibbs is, and that on and off the field. So
Absolutely. And I don't want to say a trade Gibbs fan because I would be crushed, but as someone who at least would be willing to entertain the offer and the thought process of that, as I've already done this offseason because I did a whole what if we kept Montgomery instead. Like, don't get me wrong, Gibbs is probably my second favorite player on this entire team. And as you mentioned, it's not really beneficial to let your best players walk. Most, I almost want to say all, but it's never all. Most teams don't let their best players walk. And as you mentioned, kind of there's a contradiction in the fan base. And I don't know if it's the same people that were complaining before or if one half the fan base was complaining while the other half was praising, and now we kind of switched how we do things, and now it's vice versa. The people that were happy are now not. But at the end of the day, and I don't want to get too far off the point, but at the end of the day, obviously Brad Holmes is the one who's orchestrating all of these moves. And he got us to 15-2. He got us to the NFC Championship game. He got us two division titles, which I know some people say, "Oh wow, we won the division," but what did we actually win? Nothing, because it wasn't a Super Bowl. Like, do you realize where we were before? And like, I don't want to keep harping on it because I have brought it up a lot. So if you're a consistent viewer of the show, A, thank you, and B, um, I don't anticipate um, everyone seeing every show, and we always can have new people spread the word. So I do like to bring up some points time and time again, and it's just like growing up many moons ago, like 4 or 5 wins was considered a good year. Like we were constantly drafting in the top five. The Roy Williams, Charles Rogers, Joey Harringtons, and we never got any better. So we have a guy who's drafting at a solid rate. Yes, he has misses. Everyone does. Get over it. He hits very well compared to other elite level GMs. And then when we hit on these picks, it's kind of important to keep them. You don't want to draft a guy and then just let him walk away in free agency when he's 26, 27, and right about to hit his prime of his career. It makes no sense. So I, for one, before getting off my soapbox here, we'll just say we are really lucky in this town to have a GM like him, in my opinion.
yeah, I totally agree. And the point we've said over and over on the show, like you mentioned, is we have a lot of I think people that are just confused. Honestly, it's like they don't remember like COVID like wiped their brain or something because they don't remember what it was like before 2021. Because it's been a while since the Lions won the division, like you mentioned. So, with that being said, there's a lot of rumors going around too about Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes apparently not being on the same page and having a big disagreement or something along those lines. Look, am I saying it's completely out of the realm of possibility that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell don't agree on everything? No, I think they probably don't agree on everything. Um, that in a relationship like theirs, especially, there has to be compromises, and I'm sure there has been a lot of them, and I think that's why they have such a healthy work relationship. Now, I will say I think the report itself is kind of BS, just simply because it's like, okay, we're gonna drum up some, clicks and everything throughout this free agent process. It's winding down. Things are kind of dying out. We're getting into the draft conversation a little bit more now. So we're gonna make some big, announcement or whatever the report, whatever you want to call it. Um, saying these things. And look, like I said, do I think it's completely out of the realm of possibility? No. But I just don't think it's really that big of a deal. And Brad Holmes said they are in lockstep, which what else is he supposed to say, to be fair? But at the same time, I kind of believe him. I don't think they're really having issues. Like, and if they are, it's probably just like, hey, I think we need this. And maybe Brad's like, I don't know if it's that big of a need, but I don't think it's Brad just being like, nah, Dan, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they know what they're doing and they do their job well. So
absolutely. I'm in lockstep with you. And the only thing I wanted to say is because, like, I'm not trying to bash other shows. Like, I don't want to be that guy. But there's a couple well-known Twitter pages out there that have posted many things over the years that are almost 95% incorrect. And most of the people on Twitter know who those accounts are and even called it out the day of. Um, so I would just say for that, because like you said, I don't know what's going on in the room, but I highly doubt it is as tense as that report made it sound. So I would just say check your sources and we'll just move on.
for sure. And with that said, we will move on to our Lions free agency kind of overview recap. This isn't going to be super long. We're not going to go in depth on every single player necessarily because we've done that before on this show. And if you want to see that, you can go watch older episodes after this one to kind of get our, also in the moment thoughts are really nice. So like right after we signed Cade Mays, I'd recommend watching that show. So with that being said, overall, the Lions have done a solid job in free agency. We're just going to go down the list really quickly. Recently, they signed Peyton Turner, the defensive end, and Ben Barch, interior offensive lineman. I personally really like both of these moves. Peyton Turner obviously is not a guy we're relying on to start, but I'll tell you what. For being our next Marcus Davenport, I think I like him a little bit more. Do I think that, or do I hope that he's going to be, a key contributor next year? Not really. I think he's going to be a depth piece that can rotate and do what we ask of him. And I think I've seen a lot of people overreacting, like, oh, he's ass. And it's like, buddy, if he was ass, he wouldn't have been a first round pick and still in the NFL. Might not be the greatest. Okay, I'm not gonna say he is, but I still think it's a solid signing. And then Ben Barch is a very good interior offensive line depth piece. He could, maybe fight for that left guard spot, but I'm not really gonna get too excited about that. He's a guy that isn't really like a natural offensive lineman. He had to put on a lot of weight to be able to play the position. And he played at a smaller school in college, so obviously he's had NFL snaps and everything like that. I just don't know if I am looking forward as okay. Ben Barch is definitely our starter at left guard, but it'll definitely be a competition. And then, just kind of going down the list in general here, signed Cade Mays, Larry Borum, Isaiah Pacheco, Teddy Bridgewater, Tyler Conklin, Roger McCreary, Christian Izzian, DJ Wanham, Greg Dortch, and Damon Clark. And I'll tell you what, if anybody wants to say Brad Holmes isn't doing anything, that was a lot of names, brother.
And there's
They
more.
did a lot, and there's more. They re-signed Rodrigo, Yasin, Bates, Miles Adams, Trevor Nowaski, and then of course they traded Montgomery for pick 128, Juice Scruggs, and a seventh round pick. So with that being said, just going down the list real quick, giving grades. For Peyton Turner, which he got the vet minimum. I'll give it a C. Nothing crazy. Doesn't really move the needle for me. And then Ben Barch, I'll give that a B. Decent move, but doesn't really move the needle for me that much. But I like the addition for sure.
Yeah, I give Turner a C minus just because, to be honest with you, I don't know if he makes the team out of camp. He is quite oftenly hurt. But I'll give it a C minus here just because it's 1 year at the vet minimum, so it's literally impossible to complain about the contract at least. So even if he doesn't make it, which like I said, I don't think he will, but who am I? It's still 1 year vet minimum, so I can't give it like a failing grade. It is what it is. And then Barch, I actually give that one an A minus. As of now, I will say, just because the years and terms aren't out, I'm guessing it's 1 year on a cheap deal. As you mentioned, he's not a natural O lineman. He had to put on a lot of weight. I remember reading an article about a special smoothie he made. Long story short, don't look that up. It's gross. Um,
Very.
but but he is a pretty solid old lineman in the reps he has taken. He is unfortunately another guy like Turner who is hurt often, but he is not coming in here to be that 17 game starter. He is just being brought in here for a backup role slash competition. So maybe he wins out. Maybe if because it's the NFL and players get hurt, if someone goes down, he can fill in and he has starting experience on the line at both guard positions. So assuming the contract is a small one, because like I said, this can go down depending on the numbers. But for right now, we got a I don't want to call him an NFL veteran because he hasn't had that much time, but someone who has made starts at multiple O line positions as a just kind of like a camp body backup. We'll see where he ends up, but I can't complain about that.
Yeah, and I kind of feel the way you do about Turner. I feel that way about Barch. Like, I'm not even sure if he'll make the roster, but I think he has potential to start, which is crazy to think both of those things could be possible. But, the one thing I will say with like Turner specifically is this is a Brad Holmes MO move. I think it's a high upside, very low floor.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, though, it's not a big deal. So I really like the move for that. And then moving on to a few more moves here. Cade Mays was the big one, of course, which I'll give it a B plus. The only reason I give it a B plus is because look, Cade Mays is a guy that I really like, but I don't love. And I said that kind of going through the free agent process that he was probably the third or fourth guy that I liked. But obviously money took us out of the contention for those guys, which is a big reason why I gave it a B plus instead of just a B. But the reason I didn't up it to an A or an A minus is simply because I don't know how big of an upgrade he is over Glasgow at this current moment. Obviously, he could get a lot better and things like that. But also, dude, he came in the NFL as a fullback. He hasn't really been like a 3 year starter, veteran, stalwart at the freaking center position. He is a guy who took the position from a guy who got hurt last year and never gave it back, which again is a positive thing. It's a positive sign, and his film looks good. But just from now, I think I would have liked a little bit more of a steady center option, who's a veteran, for this, Super Bowl run that hopefully we're gonna go on. But again, a B plus, I still like the move. And then Larry Borum, our other offensive lineman, I'll give this a C plus simply because there is potential that he is a starter for us, and I just don't necessarily love the idea of counting on a guy who, again, similar to Cade Mays, has only started a handful of games last year, and we'll see what happens. But as a depth pick only, I'd probably give this a B plus, just because he does have that starter upside. But these grades are kind of TBA in a lot of ways too
Yeah,
because the
sight
draft.
unseen.
Yeah, exactly. The draft hasn't happened yet, so there's more things to see as we go.
Yeah, I have Cade Mays as an A plus just because I do really like him, especially for the contract, which I have harped on for a few players and other podcasts. Um, I wanted, like many fans, Tyler Lindenbaum, but when we can get Cade Mays for 3 years and 2 million less than Linderbaum's in single season, to me it's a no-brainer. Once again, going back to how we started the show or how I started the show with pinching the pennies and whatnot. When you can get a starting caliber center, which Mays is, like don't get me wrong, he's got room to grow, but when you get a starting caliber center, which he is, for 8 million a year in this league economy, I don't know how you want to say that. That is a steal in my opinion. As long as he's even just average, that contract is worth it. And I do think personally, just because he's kind of on his way up, as you mentioned, he's kind of, I don't want to say learning the position, but finding his groove. He's on the way up, and I feel like Glasgow's on the way down with his age and whatnot. So I feel like
Mhm.
if Mays hasn't passed him, he will this probably year. So with the contract being factored in, I give Mays an A plus. Borum, I have a C just because to me it's more of an incomplete. I have it as
Mhm.
an A if he is Dan Skipper's replacement as a swing tackle because he has starting experience. He's not as bad as a lot of people say he is out there. But with that being said, I don't want him as my starting right tackle day in, day out going into the season. I would give the signing a D if that is the interpretation. Like, let's say we just draft a defensive end on a linebacker or whatever. We ignore the tackle position because this is our guy. I'm not real fond of that, to be honest with you. But if he's the kind of just the rotational guy, big tight end, like I said, the Dan Skipper role, or just someone who has to fill in if someone gets hurt, because once again, injuries happen, then I really like it. So I really like him as a third tackle. And down on him as a second tackle. So like I said, kind of an incomplete, but I'll give it a C for now. Um, as we mentioned with a lot of other people, it's a 1 year, 5 million deal. So once again, even if he isn't that great, his all of his money's off the books at the end of the year. So that is one of the beauties about signing so many 1 year contracts.
Yeah, and I think that also, signals we will inevitably draft a tackle early too. So I don't know if we're going to have to necessarily rely on him. And even if we do for a few games, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But like you said, definitely don't want to rely on him for the whole season, especially not the playoffs. And with that being said, Tyler Conklin, I gave a B plus just because I think, we don't know if Sam Laporte is going to be ready to go by week 1 next year. I'm not saying this because I'm hearing that he's not. I'm saying this because I'm not hearing anything. There's really no updates that I've seen or news that I've seen on Laporta. And with that being said, I think Conklin would be a great tight end 1B in that instance where, Laporta is hurt. And also, I think he's a perfect tight end too, because he can block, he can catch, he can run. I mean, dude, I think this might be in not fully correct, but Laporta and Conklin were 1 and 2 for tight ends yak yardage, which is kind of or I think yards per catch.
Okay.
Yak yardage. So obviously Conklin isn't up in the number one in the league in yak yardage total, but per catch, they're both very similar in that way and both very good at it. So I gave that a B plus because I just really like the move. As depth and, a guy who can fill in. And then Roger McCreary, I gave this an A because the contract is a 1 year deal. It's very cheap, under $2 million. He was one of my favorites in free agency. I talked about him almost every single week throughout the free agent process on this show. And I just really like what he's going to do for us. And I think, honestly, he might be better than Terrion Arnold. Now, do I think that this means he's definitely going to start over Terrion? Not necessarily. Obviously, Terrion's got a lot of room to grow. But I just really love the move with McCreary, especially considering, he's young, it's cheap, and he's got a lot of potential. And, he could be a starter for us. And then Christian Izzy and another defensive back, more of like a nickel guy, probably like a safety nickel type. Another cheap deal. I think his was 1 year, 2 million, which I am totally fine with paying him that. This, in my opinion, is like our Brian Branch backup. I think he's kind of that same style of player. Obviously, not the same exact style, but that nickel safety guy who can kind of do both. So I really like it for that. So I gave that one a B plus. And then DJ Wanham, I gave that a B simply because like I love it. Similar to Larry Borum. I love it if he's our third defensive end in a rotation. Oh my God. A guy that he can drop back, play outside linebacker, he can play inside rusher, outside rusher, good against the run. And for what we got him for, up to 6 million with 3 million essentially guaranteed, not literally guaranteed, but that's his cap hit, so that's what he's, costing us this season for sure. I like it if he's our starter, but I really don't love it. As long as we draft another defensive end to put in a rotation, I think I might be okay. But I would much prefer to draft a startable defensive end.
Yeah, and I agree with pretty much all that. I do like Conklin, as you mentioned, not quite as much as you. I give it a B overall. Solid vet, and while watching film on him, the best thing I can say, and maybe it, maybe I'm too low on him, but he looked good in an offense that had no one looking good. Like in an offense that was pretty much immobile, he at least was moving the chains, and as you mentioned, has some yak ability. So I feel like maybe I don't want to say he stunted his growth, but maybe he wasn't able to shine like he could in an offense like the Lions over there. McQuarrie, I also like. I gave that a B plus. I like his versatility because he can play inside and out. I know Izzian, as you mentioned, is more of that slot nickel guy, but McQuarrie can do it if he's called upon. And with the amount of injuries we have in our secondary, I think versatility is a requirement, not just a luxury. Isian C plus. While I do love the contract, I think as a player he is. I don't quite want to say limited, but if everyone was healthy, perfect world, I don't think you'd even see the field much besides maybe special teams. But for a stopgap guy, because even if Kirby's good to go, someone's got to do that Brian Branch role at least for a little while he's recovering from his Achilles. So I don't hate the signing whatsoever, but I'm not, going to run out and buy his jersey or anything like that. And then Verdum, I'm sorry, Wynham. Um, it's probably going to be a play now. um, he's coming off 15 starts for Carolina, so don't get me wrong. I like you. I fully envision us drafting a defensive end, potentially round one, if not maybe even round two. But he had 15 starts for Carolina, so like I'm not going to act like he's incapable of starting. Like unfortunately, some in the fan base have. Um, he, I was, I hate to say sneaky good pass rush. He only had 3 sacks, but he's had up to 8, I believe, is his career high in a season. So it's not like he's completely incapable of it. And he's a very, very good run defender. And the Lions, especially their defensive ends, no offense to Hutch, but even Hutch sometimes last year really struggled with setting that edge and letting like a running back or quarterback get outside of the contain. And that's something where Wynham does very well. So as a whole, he is a solid player, and even if we do draft a defensive end early on, he will get playing time somewhere out along that defense at some point, like guaranteed.
Yeah, and one thing with Wanham that a lot of people don't really talk about is he started his career in Minnesota and had his best years in Minnesota. And Shepard has talked about our defense being similar to that of Minnesota and Seattle. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense that we'd want a guy that can do all the things that we would want out of that position. So, with that being said, Isaiah Pacheco, I gave a B just because it's like I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I really like it though. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a perfect complement to Gibbs. The only thing I'm a little worried about is his, durability. He's had a lot of injuries the last couple years, and it seems to have, taken a little bit on his athleticism. But coming off the injuries he had last year and the year before, it makes sense that he doesn't look that great athletically, and maybe having a full off season, being healthy and things like that, he could get back to that. So we'll have to see, but I think replacing Monty with Pacheco is a solid move. Bridgewater C minus. I don't really love it honestly. I think we added Bridgewater as just kind of like a uh,
Comfort food.
quarterback. Yeah, quarterback coach. I think is just he's like um, I don't know if he's really the guy we're gonna want to rely on if Goff got hurt, and I know we had to before. But I just feel like last season he was just. I don't know. He kind of took a step away from playing and started coaching, but he did say he doesn't know if he'll get back into coaching again. So we'll see. But I just don't love it. Dortch, I'll give it a B. Khalif Raymond replacement, young, cheap. I really like his special teams ability as well. And he's got some speed. So again, don't love it, don't hate it. You'll hear that a lot, I think, with this Brad Holmes free agency class this year. Just a decent class, nothing awesome, but nothing really terrible, which is kind of what we need at this point. And then I have Damon Clark with a C plus. Versatile, athletic linebacker who had some injury issues. And we'll see if he can get back to form. Hopefully, we won't have to rely on him too, though. So,
Yeah, I have Pacheco as an A just because once again the contract, 1 year, 1.8 million. Um, on paper, at least he is a guy who, well, I shouldn't even say on paper, on the field. He is a guy who's probably our best blitz pickup guy from the backfield, even over Gibbs. I love Gibbs, but that's just not his
yeah,
bag.
Gibbs is not a good pass blocker.
Yeah, I'm like I love Gibbs, but that's just not his thing. And he's even better than Montgomery in that aspect. And anytime, in my opinion, you can get a guy for 1 year under 2 million, and he was a starter on a Super Bowl team, and he's only coming here to be our backup, like I just can't complain about that. Like I know that was pre him, shattering his leg and all that, but he's only expected to be a backup here. I don't think that the Lions envision, barring injury, using him that much. I don't think it's going to be like a 60-40 split like it was with Gibbs and Montgomery his rookie season. I think it might be just 80-20, maybe some goal line work or short like third and one, third and twos. I don't think he's going to be really asked to do too much. So even if he's not what he used to be, he can still be highly valuable, once again for that price. Dortch, I'll give a B plus just because I feel like he is. I don't want to quite say a clone, but pretty much a carbon copy paste of Cleve Raymond. He is a small, shifty guy, punt and kick returner, slot receiver. I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, were trying to post his stats on Twitter when we signed him, saying this is what we got. I'm like, he's not Justin Jefferson or St. Brown, or he is a wide receiver four and a return guy. So I don't know what you're expecting, but once again, it was a short-term, cheap contract, and he's already going to be somewhat familiar with the offense since we have Petzing here for our OC, since that's where he came from with Arizona. Um, and then Clark, I gave a B minus. Um, I'll admit, and I already have before, but I'll say it again. This is more of just like a fanboy pick of mine. Personally, I was pounding the table for him on draft day. I really wanted the Lions to get him, so I'm just really thankful that I can see him in a Lions uniform, more so than what he may actually offer on the field. Don't get me wrong. Once again, it's a 1 year short-term small figure deal, so even if he doesn't pan out, we're not ruined or anything like that. And once again, kind of much like actually even less than Pachenko, he will be called upon because we still do have Rodriguez, who we re-signed, Barnes, Campbell, and I'm fairly confident we'll also draft a linebacker decently high. I would say the third round, but at least for now, we don't have a third round pick for now. And we know how Brad Holmes likes to move around the draft board, but he was able to at least get on the field and make some impact on a Houston defense that is quite the good defense. So it's not like he was, excuse me, seeing snaps on like the Saints or one of those other teams. Unfortunately,
Yeah, definitely. And I think overall for the free agent class, I would give it a B minus, simply because nothing super splashy, but we filled a lot of holes. We got some depth. And the only reason I give it a B minus and not a B or a B plus is because I do wish we had a little bit more money to play with in this way of we still need some depth, guys. Like we still need a linebacker, which we could draft, of course. We still need defensive linemen all across the board. We still need, maybe tight end help. We still need some defensive backs. So we'll see what happens. But with that being said, moving on to our re-signings. Overall, I give our re-signings a B. We re-signed Rodrigo, Rockison, Jake Bates, and Trevor Nowaski. I and also Miles Adams. I personally, I like Rodrigo. I like Yasin. I like Bates. I I'm on Nowaski. Not a big deal for me. He's a decent depth linebacker who's shown some versatility with us the last few years. And then the Miles Adams one, I've heard a lot about him in terms of like how smart he is as a player. So that could be a big difference maker. I don't necessarily love what I saw on film this last or on the field this last year, but I can't say I hate it either. So another decent depth piece. And then, obviously the trade that we traded Montgomery for pick 128, Juice Scruggs, and a future seven, which I give that an A. I think. Great way to asset manage. Trading an old, aging, expensive running back and getting interior line depth. You know, 100 top 120 pick. Or I'm sorry, it was what pick 128, so a top 130 pick, and a future seven. I think is a really good way to move things around, especially considering we got him for free, 4 years ago.
Yeah, I like our re-signings as you mentioned. Nowoski's the one that I don't want to say has me scratching my head, but as you mentioned, um, they're not difference makers in terms of game changers, but they can be difference makers as in if someone gets hurt, like when Anzalone got hurt, he made a couple starts in a pinch, and I feel like this entire free agent class, we got so much better at our second and third string units. Other than running back, because like I said, I like the contract in Pachenko, but he's not Montgomery. But he's a lot cheaper. He's one third the price. So um, overall, I like our free agent class. I'll give it a B plus. I really like how we saw our holes and we directly addressed them. We didn't kind of go out and get that big fish, but instead we filled, in my opinion, probably six, seven holes in terms of depth and like number two and number three positions. And especially with how injured we've been the last 2 years, those are huge needs. And um, obviously, you'd never want anyone to get hurt, but in the NFL, it just happens. And when you can have someone who's been there, done that, is experienced, come off the bench, and it's not, some undrafted free agent because you have to get someone cheap because your starter makes all $20 million and whatnot. It can be a huge difference in the long run, and I feel like we did an A plus job of doing that. But since, like I said, we didn't get any of the day in day out day one starter game changers, I'll just give it a B plus. And then the re-signings I've enjoyed as well, especially Rock Yassin. He earned an extension. I believe that was only 1 year. I was willing to give him more, but it is what it is. It seems like a lot of Brad Holmes contracts are just going to be 1 year at least for this offseason. We can always give him another one next year if he continues. Um, right now, I'm because of those holes. Like, don't get me wrong, as you mentioned, we still have some work to do in some depth spots, but I feel like there's only really three big positions of need we have going into this draft in terms of like, hey, we need a guy here. Other than that, it's just take the best player available for me and let's roll into the season.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of the draft, we're going to close the show out today talking about our favorite two prospects at pick 17. Because obviously that's kind of where we're at right now. The free agency is kind of, coming to a close. Obviously, it's not over, but the Lions really aren't going to be doing a lot, I don't think, in the next few weeks. So, coming into the draft, the Lions are currently sitting at pick 17, and obviously, in my opinion, there are two big needs, and that's tackle and D end, which I think we all agree. And I picked one of each. I just felt that was the easy way to go here, considering there's a couple different ways we could go. Um, Both of these guys, too, I think might be trade down candidates. So that's something to keep an eye on. But Caleb Lomu from Utah is a guy I really like. Yeah, he's young, but he's also a little bit raw in terms of physically. I don't know if like I don't know if I would call his technique super raw, but just more physically, power wise, he needs to put on some strength. With that being said, though, he projects at left tackle, which works out really well for us. And makes it to where Sewell doesn't have to move over to left tackle. We just have a guy who can come in, be our left tackle. And this also makes sense because he might be a guy we could trade down for, like I mentioned before, and might not have to start him day one because we do have Borum, because he does need a little bit of work, obviously, like I mentioned before. But in my opinion, solid feet. He's really solid anchor versus power rush. He's a solid athlete and a good mover in space. He works well in like zone run scenarios. And then, like I said, he needs more physical development. But Fraley is kind of the guy that is going to be able to get that from this kid. And one thing, that I didn't love about his film was he had inconsistent leverage at times, just in the run game specifically. Can happen in the pass game sometimes too, but his run blocking really is the issue, I think, for him. But, putting him at left tackle, I don't know if that is a huge problem. And obviously, like I said, you can work on that. So, with that being said, I think Freeling moving up the board really helped us with Lomu. Simply because, a lot of people saw him going a little bit earlier, and, people thought Spencer Fano was probably going to be the guy that we ended up getting, which, call me crazy, I think Fano goes higher than Lomu does simply because he's shown the versatility to be able to play the inside spots, and I think that's what the NFL teams are going to want him to do. So, and then, like I said before, definitely could trade back and get him, I think, at this point, just because I think NFL teams do view him as a little bit more of a raw prospect, who can play right away, but is going to have some issues, early on. So, and then, second, I have TJ Parker. I just think TJ Parker is a perfect fit for Detroit. Power rusher, run defender, really thick build, physical at the point of attack, good hands in both run and the pass game. Solid mover, change of direction. He doesn't have like, elite athletic traits or explosiveness or anything like that, but, you know, I will say that's probably his biggest issue is he lacks some of that explosiveness off the line, but I I just see him as a guy that fits perfect next to Aiden Hutchinson in what, Brad Holmes has kind of wanted the last few drafts at defensive end. And I think this might be the type of guy that makes him pick him in the first round. But again, you could trade down, I think. And I think you're even more um insured trading down for a guy like TJ Parker than Lomu, just because I think Lomu could get picked up in that mid 20s area if we don't grab him. But with that being said, he's not a prototypical pass rusher. He doesn't have great bend, but like I said, I just think the Lions love his type at the end of the day.
He's got to have more bend than Reese. If I don't know if you've seen that video yet.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Actually, speaking of that, I got into a bunch of arguments on Twitter because I all I did was I commented, well, that's because Reese is a 3-4 outside linebacker
Hmm.
and Bain is a 3-4 defensive end. And there's been a lot of people that agree with me, and there's been a lot of people that disagree with me. And I'll tell you what, a lot of people that disagree with me because they don't know what I was talking about. And I mean that as in like I'm not talking about your Madden 3-4 defensive end who's basically a defensive tackle and just sits there head up of a guard and you know what I'm saying, has to two gap his way out of things. No. I'm talking about a 3-4 like open end. He could play closed end too, but an open end where he's going to play like 5 tech and out, which a lot of you might not know what a 5 tech is, but that's inside shoulder of the tackle. And then 6 tech is head up of the tackle, and then 7 tech is outside shoulder of the tackle. So that's where I would put Bain because I think that's just where he wins. And then Reese, to your point, he's not a pure edge rusher. That's why he didn't look that great in that drill, which is kind of why I'd use him more of as a versatile linebacker in that way.
Oh yeah, he's still a great player, but that was just not the best video for him.
Yeah. And I think some people
Um,
might be surprised that he doesn't get drafted in the top five. And I don't think it's because of that video. I think it's because he's not a pure edge rusher, and we all kind of know that already.
yeah, I think he's going to be a hell of an off-ball linebacker. Personally, with I don't want to say a heavy emphasis on blitzing, but he can pass rush, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, but either way, that's not going to apply to the Lions unless he really falls, and why not at that point? Um, although that's not happening. With that being said, both of my guys who, pending on which mock draft site you use, because I do try to mix it up because kind of fortunately and unfortunately, the depending on which model you use to do your mock draft greatly determines the board. Um, so I like mixing it up because it's more realistic because you don't know what's gonna happen. But for my first guy, I like at 17 for the Lions is Spencer Fano, um, who you mentioned. I at the start of this draft process thought he was a top 6 to 7 lock. And for whatever reason, on multiple pages and just in fan chatter on Twitter, he's falling down some boards. and I have no idea why, to be honest with you. He's 6'5", 311. He's a right tackle. He's the other anchor on that same line as Lomu, as you mentioned, who I do also like Lomu. And yeah, he expressed a willingness to move inside. Um, he said he would even play center if he was asked to. I know prior to signing Cade Mays, I'm just like, hmm. But I feel like he can play right tackle in the league. And obviously for us, that would mean moving Sewell over to left, which I have mixed feelings on, but I've talked about that in volumes
I don't
on
think
other.
it's a big deal at all, and I
I don't
think
think it's a big deal.
it's
Someone of
not.
his talent, I don't. He'll be fine.
It'd be
But
different if he'd never played left tackle before. If he
yeah,
was like Tate Ratledge, who's only played right guard, if we were like, we're gonna move you to left tackle, I'd be like, all right, let's slow down. All right, he's not even a
yeah,
tackle, let alone left.
true. I think so. Will be just fine moving, but I'm pretty big on don't rock the boat if you don't have to. But I'd rather have Fano plays, in my opinion, his more natural position at right tackle, so it can go back to left, and it would be the least amount of disruption on the line. He is um, a lot better than people were giving him credit for. Like I said, that's a mixed bag in itself. I should say he's better than people have been giving him credit for lately because, like I said, he was a top 7 to 8 pick early in the mock draft season. But in his 382 pass blocking reps, he allowed 0 sacks and only 5 pressures. And he won the Outland Award for the best lineman in the Big 12. So I don't know if he'll even be there, but if he is, I do think, as you mentioned, kind of a little bit with Lomu, I think he can work on his run blocking a little bit. Of course, no one's a perfect prospect, but it's not bad. And I feel like he excels in the pass blocking game and kind of reminds me a little bit of Mays. He's a better pass blocker than a run blocker, but it doesn't mean he can't run block. And we have seen over the past couple years, if you keep Goff clean, he will just dissect a defense. So I feel like this is right up our alley, position of need, and it can really anchor the other side once again Sewell moving over to left tackle. Also, don't know if he'll be there, but my second prospect is Monroe Freeling, who is a giant 6'7", 315-pound left tackle from Georgia. As much as like we just talked about with Sewell should be fine, and I just say should be just because you got to leave the door cracked. Should be fine moving over the left tackle. It would be nice just to draft a left tackle and let Sewell just sit there on the right side and continue to dominate. And Freeling is someone who, as you mentioned, has been flying up the boards, which makes Lomu possibly a more realistic option. But I don't think Freeling is guaranteed to go before we pick at 17. Maybe likely, but not guaranteed. Um, he was a second team All SEC, and he gave up 0 sacks as well and as a 13 game starter against his SEC opponents for Georgia. So if you can, and he, in my opinion, is a better run blocker than some of the other guys I've mentioned. So in addition to giving us stout pass blocking, he is a pretty solid run blocker as well. Very athletic. I can't remember his rare score off the top of my head, but I know it was 9 point something. It was up there. He's very athletic, moves very well, and which the more I hype him up, the more I'm like, maybe he won't be there at 17. But but he's a very good guy. Like I said, you won't have to move Sewell over, um, and it would be, in my opinion, like this would be my potential realistic because, like I said, he can go before, but my like dream come true pick at 17, just because we won't have to shift anyone else over, besides maybe a tight end two. I think he would complete the offense, and then we can literally pretty much go defense from in the draft from that point on.
Yeah, for sure. And I like, Freeling for all the reasons you listed, but I just don't think he'll be there. But like you said, it's definitely not a lock, considering he was kind of a back of the first round pick. And then post combine, people are saying he could go top 10. We've seen that happen before, and we've seen it like DK Metcalf, where he was a late first rounder and then flew all the way up to like pick 4 to the Raiders because he ran so well. and then he was a second round pick. So, you know, a lot of these media guys don't actually know what's going to happen. It's just, you know, keeping the train going, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. But with that being said, that is all we got for the show this week. You know, as always, if you want to do your own free agency, you know, if you really, really hate what the Lions did, even go be Brad Holmes yourself and use sticktothemodel.com with their new Be a GM mode. We have the premium subscription and we love it. It does a lot of different things for us that you don't get from the free subscription model. So, very cool website, really cool software. The free agents, the trades, the draft, they have everything in there. So, check it out and use our code MFN 2026. Link is in the description. And then, as always, Fanatics, you know, check them out. You don't have to buy a jersey from them, but they got a lot of good stuff. It doesn't have to be even something you put on your body. It could be, you know, the thing behind me here. I got a training camp towel, which obviously was not from Fanatics, but a lot of things like that they have there are very nice and at a good price, which they should use as their new slogan, in my opinion. But with that being said, link is in the description for that as well. And then our last ad or announcement here. The last couple weeks, you guys have heard me talk about a Final Four watch party brought to you by Michigan Football Network. It is officially happening, and it is officially at Ned's on Gull Lake in Richland, Michigan. If you live, you know, anywhere near there, definitely check it out. The link will be in the description. It's going to be a really fun time. All you can eat, all you can drink. Alcoholic beverages will be limited, but it'll be depending on what ticket you buy. You can buy as many as you want after you go through what's included in the ticket, but with that being said, it should be an awesome time. So check that out. Link is in the description. And as always, we appreciate you guys for watching. You can find me at JSoSweet, James at Gullet_James. You can find us both at MIFB Network. And we will see you guys next Wednesday.